Welcome back to the Globe Girl podcast. I am excited to welcome Brian to the show. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. Well, why don't we get started by having you tell our audience listening or watching out there who you are and what you do?
That's always such an interesting question when I get it because I do a lot of stuff and it's cool that I get to do a lot of stuff and honestly only in the last 6 months or so has all of that stuff sort of come together into a specific area, which we can get into. But I mean, I'm a keynote speaker. I do workshops. I'm a sport and performance psychology consultant. I'm a faculty member at Grand Canyon University, and I'm a stunt man and stunt coordinator. So there are a lot of different things going on. But so yeah, that's kind of what I do. I don't know how much into any of that you want to get, but like I said, it's all kind of coalesced now around this one area where I've decided over the past 6 to 8 months or so that my focus, my niche, where I'm going to go, because I just went through a rebrand, is going to be high stakes performance, high stakes environments, high stakes situations, and how to be at our best in those moments, not only from a performance standpoint, but from a well-being standpoint. How do we get into those situations, whether they be one-off situations or if that's just the environment that we're in, just because of whatever situations we're in. You know, how do we maintain well-being as well as high-level performance in those situations?
Okay. Yeah, I love that. So why don't we start here? Because of your background as a stuntman, obviously that is high performance. That is a situation where you are at your peak and high performance. So can you talk about your experience as a stuntman and how it's influenced the work now that you are doing?
Yeah, the stuntman thing, it's interesting how that even came out. I mean, I didn't grow up wanting to be a stuntman, but what's funny is I can't say that I didn't know that stunt people existed either, because I'm old enough to have watched the TV show The Fall Guy, not the movie that just came out, but the TV show with Lee Majors back in the day. And so I knew that stunt people were a thing. It just never occurred to me that it was an actual job that people did until I saw a stunt show while I was in college. I guess it was the beginning of my junior year is when I saw the show, and that hooked me. And that was when I put two and two together and I realized, oh man, this is actually a thing that people can do for work. And I want to do it. And so then I was able to go backstage and talk to the people, figure out how do you get that job, and went to the audition and I got it, and I was able to do that show the next 2 summers. And that was just, I can't even describe the feeling of that. It was, I went from floundering in college, having no clue what I wanted to be when I grew up, to having direction and having passion for something. And that's where that happened. And so much so that this is where passion can get you in trouble sometimes, is I didn't graduate from college. I dropped out with 1 semester to go to move to Los Angeles and be a stuntman. And that's what I did. And I ended up going back again, but it took 4 or 5 years to decide, you know what? I really do want to finish up this thing that I started. I miss learning. I miss the material. I miss the process. And so let me go get this going. And so I finished that degree and then got a master's in sports psychology and a PhD in organizational psychology, never with the intention of working in those fields. It was just because it was so interesting to me. It was fascinating how powerful the mind is and how much it influences us just on a daily basis, consciously and unconsciously, how much the mind influences our choices and decisions and feelings and all of that. And the sports psychology piece in particular was immediately relevant with stunts. So sports psychology, performance psychology, for those who don't know, it's really about helping people get their minds right for whatever performance they're doing. It's been around in athletics for a long time, meaning how do you get your attention where it needs to be? How do you keep your thoughts productive, both before and during and even after performances? How do you regulate and manage energy activation levels? How do you use your mind to train and even get better more efficiently and stay consistent in your performance? That's really what sports psychology has been about traditionally. And it took a while for that to branch out into other areas, meaning in athletics, sports psychology has been there since the 80s, but it's only been fairly recently that it's also been put into other performance areas, singers, dancers, musicians, etc., into the military. I worked for the military for 10 years. I wasn't in the military, but I worked as a contractor with the U.S. Army for, well, it was 11 years as a sport performance psychology consultant. So it's branched out into these other areas. And for me, it was immediately apparent why that's the case, because as soon as I started taking those classes, whenever I was training, whenever I was on set, even
Mhm,
between jobs, when I was trying to maintain confidence, maintain motivation, those
mhm,
things that are so challenging sometimes when we're struggling to get ourselves where we need to be. We're not, for whatever reason, the goals just, they seem to, it's like the horizon, you keep on going and it just never gets closer. Like those moments are there for all of us. And
mhm,
sports psychology, performance psychology addresses that as well, or through injuries. When I got hurt, how do you
mhm,
keep that motivation and how do you keep a productive mindset through the recovery process? And
mhm.
then once you get back to doing what it was that you got hurt doing, how do you keep
Right.
your confidence level there? And how do you
Yes, to go back and do it.
yeah, so
Yeah.
all of that was so relevant and so just immediately applicable as I was going through those programs that it was so fun. It
Mhm.
was just interesting material, even if I wasn't in that field. But because I was in the field, I could not only just read about it and write about it, but then I got to go do it. And
Yeah.
that's where things really got solidified. And that was true when I was at the Army job as well.
Yeah.
I got to read about it, I got to teach the people, and I got to do it myself in
Mhm.
my own life.
I loved all of that. And thank you so much for sharing because I was writing down some things that you were talking. First of all, I just think it's really cool. I know you talked about you left school to pursue a passion. And I think that's important because a lot of people, and I think it's important for you to tell the story because you're like, then I closed it. I went back. But
Mhm.
you felt empowered to lead, to follow something that was a purpose and a passion for you. And I think a lot of times we are in this mindset that it's the only way to do it is to take this route, right? It's to go to school, it's to get the degree, it's to do the thing. And I just love when people tell stories of finding their purpose in what matters to them in other avenues. But because you are like a lifelong learner, you still went back because you missed it. You wanted to finish it. So that stood out to me. Also, okay, the reference to the Fall Guys. So love that because I do remember that show when I was little. Like I think I was little. I remember my parents watching that and you said Lee Majors and I was like, wait, I think somebody in my family had like a Lee Majors, like a doll. So like an action figure, but also love the new movie too as well. But just talking about your work with athletes and man, I do love that I get to talk about I love sports and two sports that I really enjoy and I just am always so intrigued by the mindset of the players is golf and tennis because these are two sports in which these people are playing mostly by themselves independently. So they have to really focus on building their own mental like wellness and making sure that they stay focused. This pains me to talk about, but I'm going to talk about it. Like okay, we look at, you talked about like sort of falling off and having to get back up. We're going to just say get back up on the horse, right? So it's a new year. I mean, I'm a Rory McIlroy fan. Rory had the US Open in his grasp last year. And basically, because of some issues with putting, he did not win, right? So you think about now there's a whole new year coming, right? He's about to embark on majors again this season. And you have to think about like, how does one get back up on the horse, right? As you think, and a sport that is a solo sport. It's not like he doesn't have people. His cat is not behind him going like, go, 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 like go, Rory, go. I mean, it's a sport. I'm so intrigued by people who do individual sport because I think like it's such a strong like mentality. And I do love when I see like tennis players and golfers who talk about having sports psychologists and having someone on their team that helps them to stay focused because I think they just sometimes get overlooked because it's an individual sport and people on teams, it's like, well, they've got teammates, they've got people around them all the time. And I just think, have you worked in your time of working with athletes? Have you focused on people who have maybe been solo players in a potential sport? And what are some of the challenges that you've seen that they experience as it comes to them being, their performance and motivation? Because I think too, like you'll hear people say things like, well, I mean, they're playing to win. So they should just be able to focus and win. And I don't think like it's always that easy. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, to answer your question, yes, I've worked with a lot of individual athletes. In fact, that's what got me into sports psychology in the first place was my work with gymnasts. I was coaching gymnastics. And although that they sort of couch it as a team sport, and it sort of is at the lower levels, there's a gymnastics team. But
Yeah.
the girls all, and I worked with the girls all competed individually. So it was
Yeah.
a group, they trained together, they went to competitions together, but they were all competing individually. So it's kind of a weird dynamic. Not weird, it's just a different dynamic
Right.
from
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
teams. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's the individual who's standing up there and doing what they do. I've worked with tennis players, I've worked with ice skaters, the figure
Mhm.
skaters. I have worked with a couple golfers, not a whole lot of those, but the individual sports are interesting because you can go down the rabbit hole real quick. And I think that's true of team sports too, but there is a group dynamic that plays a different role in the team
Mhm.
sports where, I mean, there is such a thing as team confidence, like group confidence. And
Yeah.
so you really, and emotions are contagious. So you really do feed off of your teammates when you're a cohesive group like that.
Right.
The individuals, they're just themselves. And they do struggle quite a bit with some of that stuff some of the time. And by some of the stuff, I mean confidence, with motivation, with attention
Mhm.
and focus. And the reasons for that, it varies from person to person. But one of the things that I really try my best to, I usually start off with this, to be perfectly honest with you, is how do you define success? What is that? Because many of them will have definitions of success that are just way out of their control. So, for example, it might be winning a competition, it might be placing in the top three of a competition. And that's a fine thing to shoot for whatever reason. And that's another thing that we get into. Well, why do you care? Well, because I want to look good in front of everybody. I want to get the endorsements.
Mhm.
I want everybody
Yeah.
to say my name. Or, well, because that confirms the work that I've done. That
Right.
validates the effort that I've put.
Mhm.
Those are two very different reasons why somebody might want to place in the top
Exactly.
three.
Yeah.
But either way, placing in the top three is not up to you. There are other people competing, and they get they contribute to where you are in
Right.
that ranking. So trying to figure out some definitions of success that
Mhm.
we have way more control over is a lot better. And the way to do that is just by backing up, or at least a way to do it is by backing up from that bigger
Mhm.
goal. So, okay, so you want to win the competition? Great. Well, what do you need to do in order to do that? We'll just stick with gymnastics because I was just talking
Okay.
about it. So
Mhm.
what do we need to do in order to win the gymnastics meet? Well, there are 4 events and I need to stick my routines. I need to minimize the mistakes that I make and go as big as I can. Yes, yes, that's exactly what you need to do. So what does stick the routine mean? What do you need to do in order to do
Mhm.
that? Well, on vault, it means I need to run as fast as I can. I need to punch the board tight and strong. So you zero them down to, okay, great. So let's call
Yeah.
that success. To what
Mhm.
extent was your vault powerful? Powerful meaning the run, powerful meaning the punch, powerful meaning the
Mhm.
block. We're going to put it all together into a rating of powerful. Because if you're
Yeah.
powerful on the vault, chances are your score is going to be higher. And if your score is
Mhm.
higher, then you're setting conditions for yourself to win the competition. So that's what I mean by
Right.
backing it up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not about focusing on that outcome that we can't
Mm.
control. It's backing it up to those things that we can control and
Mhm.
making those the objectives that we really put our attention on.
Yeah. I
Because
love that.
and that does a couple things. One
Yeah.
is it again, it puts the ball back in our court. It makes us in
Mhm.
control. But another thing that
Mhm.
it does is it takes away pressure. Because pressure is
Mhm.
when we experience pressure when our attention is on the potential consequences of what we're doing. If I do this badly, then. And whatever
Mhm.
follows that then, that's where the pressure starts getting created. Or even if I do this well, then. If I do this well, then
Right.
everybody's going to know me. I'm going to be at the top of the thing. I'm going to get all the endorsements. Well, even that can create pressure.
Exactly.
So the bottom line is the pressure is the result of the consequences. And when we're focusing on the consequences, we are not paying attention to those things that we need to do in the moment to achieve the objectives that we've set. So it accomplishes 2 things. When we back things up, we get our attention where it needs to be and we eliminate pressure.
I like that. I love the example. And I also was too thinking about, we obviously here on this show, we have a lot of people who are, people who are working professional jobs, but a lot of people who are entrepreneurs. and who are solopreneurs. And I was thinking about that when you started to talk about myself being someone who I have a corporate job, but I'm also a solopreneur. And a lot of times when you're working by yourself, the difference in me working every day in my corporate job with the team is that there's a team of us who get to work toward accomplishing a goal. And in this business, it's just me. So then I wrote down what you said. It's just a reminder of defining what success looks like to us, because I think when you're a solopreneur, you're often just like, if you're a workingpreneur, then you're like, I got to figure out how to get away to exit corporate America. Then you have to think about the things that you can control, take a step back, define success differently. I love that for us listening who are,
Well, a lot of the people listening, because we've been talking about athletics, and most people aren't athletes. That's just the fact of the matter. And people can kind of get turned off. And they're like, all right, they're talking about sports. I'm not an athlete. This has nothing to do with me. So I like to address that right up front too. When I say performance, when I talk about performance, whether it be high stakes performance, whatever kind of performance, I'm talking about anything that we do that matters to us, that we want to do well. That's it.
Yes.
That's a performance. It may be on a field or on a court or on a stage, but it might be in your kitchen. It might be at the dinner table with homework with your kid. It might be in a conversation that you need to have with a spouse or a loved one or a friend. These are also performances, and they're things that every day we engage in performances. Things that we do that we want to do well. That's what I mean when I say that. So a lot of these skills that I'm talking about, they are not, and I say a lot, all of the skills that I'm talking about are not just applicable in sport. They're
Exactly.
life skills. They can be used everywhere, whether you're working at a corporate job or if you're trying to putt for the US Open, whatever. It doesn't matter. They're all useful.
Exactly. Yeah, and I appreciate that, because like when you started to talk about it, I immediately could relate it to my own life in the sense of the things that I do every day. So it was even though we were talking sports, but it was very transferable to my daily. I was like, oh, that's why I started writing all these notes over here, because I was like, I can use that in my everyday life.
Well, that's one of the things with the Army too. It's one of the things that when I first started working with the Army, it was traditional sport performance psychology where it was, okay, we want to shoot better. We want to get in shape better. We want to find IEDs better. We want to do medical tasks better, whatever it is. But then a little bit later, that program kind of branched off, and there was still that focus on performance, meaning that where the commanders would say, okay, so I want to bring somebody in a traditional sport psychology way. But the other branch was resilience. And that was around, okay, so what are these skills and tools and resources that we can teach soldiers that they can just carry around with them all the time, that they can have at their disposal when life happens, not just at work, although it's certainly helpful at work, but in life too. What are those things? And just really just broadening it out and just making it explicit. How do you use these things out in life in ways that are beneficial? And I'm telling you, that's where I really gravitated toward that. And I make it a huge part of my practice now. I make it very clear, for example, when I talk to a client who's an athlete, let's say, I would love it if you would win a trophy or a medal or whatever it is that you want to do, but that's not my objective. That's not the thing that I'm here for. I'm here to convey life skills to you. And I'm using athletics as the vehicle for that. I'm using this context to teach you these things and give you a place to practice them and develop some consistency in the use of them. But then you got to know that they broaden out to everything else, because it's not, you can't just pigeonhole the stuff in the performance realm. It's too useful for that, too helpful.
Yeah, for sure. So I think another thing that our audience will enjoy hearing you just talk about, because I do tend to think a lot of people who listen and watch this show also have multiple passions. And so that was one thing I really loved when you started off and you started talking about all the things that you do. It's cool. But can you talk about how you're able to balance the roles, and what advice do you have for others who might say, Brian, I hear you. I've got a lot of passions too, but I need to figure out, how to juggle all these things.
Yeah. Well, let me start here. And this, just by going back to what you said a little bit ago, yes, I did pursue a passion. I was in college And it was like you said, I don't think anybody ever sat me down and said, Brian, here's what you're going to do. You're going to
Mhm.
graduate from high school, then you're going to go to college, then you're going to go get your job, and then you're
Yeah.
going to get. I don't think anybody ever said that to me, but
Mhm.
that was certainly the understanding that I got
Right. Yeah.
somehow. And so while I was in college and I had no idea what I wanted to do, what kind of job, it was very disconcerting. It was a lot of anxiety and stress around that.
Mhm.
I didn't know where I fit. And when I found that thing, yes, that was for me a very freeing thing. It did take me off of, the path that others thought that I should walk. But as I've thought more about that, a couple things. I actually have a keynote that I give called Always on the Path because of exactly this thing. As I think back on that, I think I was never off the path. None of us are ever off the path.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
can't get off the path because there is no path in front of you. Wherever, if you're standing, you are standing on the path. You are never
Mhm.
off of it because every single thing that happens to us, every experience that we have, every interaction with somebody else that we have is part of what makes us us. It's part of
Mhm.
what determines how we experience the world, how we see the world, how we prioritize the things in the world. So
Right.
there is no off the path. If anybody's sitting out there thinking right now, "Oh, I'm way off the path. I'm in the weeds." No, you're not.
Yeah.
You might be in a situation that you don't like. It may be unpleasant for you,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean that you're not growing and that you don't have the opportunity to thrive and to flourish even not only even through that, as a result of that,
Mhm.
because of that challenge that you're facing. I mean,
Mhm.
I went through 2 divorces. I had problems with alcohol. All of that was incredibly unpleasant, and I would rather not repeat any of it. But I'm grateful for having gone through it because it taught me a lot, and
Mhm.
it pushed me in the direction that it did. It gave me values and really did solidify some priorities that I didn't know that I had at the time.
Mhm.
So we're always on the path. There
Mhm.
is no off the path. And so this idea of pursuing the passion, to me, it comes down to opportunity. And I say that there are 3 things that we need if opportunity comes up and we're going to take advantage of that. One is we have to be aware that there even is an opportunity in the first place. And
Mhm.
this comes down to broadening our awareness. There's a podcast I do with a friend of mine every now and then. We've only done a few episodes, but it's called Poking Holes and Blinders. And the
Mhm.
blinders are the things that prevent us from seeing other stuff. We all have beliefs and values. They're very strongly held that influence what we choose to look at and how we interpret it. And I
Mhm.
think it's beneficial. I don't think we can get rid of those blinders, but I think we can poke some holes in them and just see things from different angles, see things from
Mhm.
other people's perspectives.
Mhm.
And when we do that, then we can notice these opportunities when they come up. We can be aware that there is another option that's out there. And then once we're aware of that, then we have to be willing to deviate from where we were going. And this comes down to, and this is a cultural thing, especially in our culture, where if you set a goal, then you achieve that goal. Like persistence, perseverance, grit,
Mhm.
tenacity. These are all things that are like the Bible of if
Yeah.
you're going to achieve anything, then you cannot give up ever. And I'm here to tell
Right.
you, give up. If you get in the middle of something and you realize, you know what, this isn't for me anymore. Maybe it was
Mhm.
6 months ago when I set the
Yeah.
goal, but
Yeah.
I've lived in those 6 months. I've experienced more things. I've thought about more stuff. I've read more things. I've
Mhm.
interacted with different people. And now
Yeah.
I think differently. My priorities are different.
Yes.
So I have to be willing to shift. So there's the awareness first, and then
Yes.
there's the willingness to shift. And then the third thing, and this is the hardest thing for many, many people, and this is what you alluded to earlier, you have to have the courage to take that first step because we can be aware that there's an opportunity. We can even know,
Mhm.
just see that, yes, I would be willing to shift. I'm willing to go that direction. But even once we say we're willing, that
Mhm.
first step is so challenging. Now, once we take that first step, the second one tends to be easier. And so do the
Yeah.
third and the thousandth and the millionth. But that first one is a tough one. And
Mhm.
it requires courage. It requires us to put ourselves into the unknown. And human beings do not do
Yes.
well with the
Mm-mm.
unknown, with the ambiguous. We
No.
don't. And so those are, so for opportunity, you know, when you talk about pursuing passion and whether somebody's going to do it or not, and what it takes to even get into that direction, to even have the problems that you mentioned of, yeah, I got a lot of passions and I don't know how to do them all. We have to have that awareness that there's an opportunity. We have to be willing to flex and move and change our goals and objectives, and have that courage to go out into the unknown, to go outside our comfort zone and take that first step.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love everything about that because I feel like obviously we're at the beginning of the year. We're at the start of the year. A lot of people have said, oh, I want to do this thing, or I want this year to be my year. And I want to go for it all. And you couldn't have said it better. It's like recognizing it, making a pivot, but that is always the hardest thing. It's the stepping out. It's letting go of like the comfort. Because as much as people say, "Oh, I want to get out of this. I don't want to do this anymore." I was using like jobs as because most time you hear people say things like, "Oh, I'm just so tired of that job. I don't want to do this anymore." Da, da, da. And then it's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" Well, oh, I actually want, I'm a painter and I want to start selling my art, or I want to, open up a coffee shop. And it's like, then what are you doing about it? Well,
Yeah.
I know I looked at locations, but I don't know. Every time I was gonna sign it, but I'm nervous. And it's just like you said, the opportunity could be like, there's the shop here. You were out one day, you saw the shop, and then it's affordable. It's something you can afford because you're already doing the thing on the side, so to speak. And what's holding you back from like taking the step? Sign the lease. Sign if you all are listening to us or watching, sign the lease. Say yes to the thing. Like take the step. Just do it.
Yeah, it's something that, as you're talking, the way I was thinking about it, we can practice this stuff. And
Yeah.
luckily, I had the practice kind of built in. And what I mean by that is that first step is a move from safety to potentially unsafe, the
Yeah.
unknown.
Yeah.
Where that happens, it just I was just working on a TV show called The Cleaning Lady, Fox TV show.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I was assassin number one. And, and I was up on a boat trying to get some guy to try to kill him. And when we ended up doing a fight, and I got knocked off of this boat. It was a sailboat on a trailer. And I got knocked off the boat. I bounced off a picnic table and went to the ground. This was about 10 feet. There were no pads. I just went and bounced off a picnic table to the ground. So I knew it was going to hurt when I did it. And there's a moment right before when I'm standing on the boat and I'm completely safe. I don't have to fall off the boat.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's that commitment. And then there's a moment where, well, now I'm falling for sure. There's no way around it. So I better just fall right, because that's the only other option that we have. And it's that moment of transition that's a really cool moment. If you're in it enough and you do that enough times, you start to recognize it, and it starts to be a very interesting moment. I also noticed it when I played around with stand-up comedy for a little bit.
Okay.
And I noticed it there too. When I was standing off stage and it was almost my time to go on stage, I was petrified. I mean, more scared than I'd been for any stunt. I'd been hit by cars. I've been lit on fire. I've been hit by cars and lit on fire simultaneously. And I was not as afraid as I was to stand on that stage and tell jokes to people for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But there's the moment where I'm standing. I could have run. I could have gone out the door.
Yeah.
That was a possibility still. But once the guy called my name and I took that first step up the steps to the stage and the lights hit my face, now that was it. I was now in. There was no more running. It wasn't an option anymore.
Yeah.
So that commitment into the situation, once you decide, we really have to decide. Now, whether you should decide or not, I can't give anybody the answer on that. Whether you should sign the lease or not, that's going to be up to you, what your situation are, what your resources are, what you have available, what you've set in place. But once you decide to do that, man, it's like a load comes off. It's like your mindset just shifts into, okay, now I'm here. Now what? And it's a really cool thing. And I say you can train it because you can put yourself into situations like that. What feels uncomfortable to you? You could go do some stand-up comedy. They have open mics all the time if that's a thing you want to do. But many of us have other areas where maybe it just creates some discomfort for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could be as simple as, if you work at a job where there's a staff meeting every week, raise your hand, speak up, volunteer to give a presentation for some professional development or something. A lot of organizations have regular professional development, and they like to have employees do that. do that.
Yeah.
It's whatever it is that challenges you, and start
Mhm.
to play with that moment. Start to notice the moment where running is an option, quitting is an option,
Yeah.
moving away, staying safe is a choice.
Mhm.
But there's that moment where it stops being a choice, where you can't
Yes.
do that anymore. And if you're going to be successful in anything that you do, you can't hang out in that middle round,
Yeah.
on the fence kind of
Yeah.
a thing. You could be
Yep.
on the safe side or you could be on the risky side, but being in the middle, that does you no good either way. But it's a cool moment. And as
I
you were
love
talking, I thought
I
of
like
that.
that. I love that because it's really great and it's inspiring to hear you speak about it because you're taking these calculated risks. You're not just staying in, like you said, in the safe zone. And it's the thing about it is that like it's almost like I always tell the people at my job, on my team, I'm like, look, first of all, we're not saving lives here. We're marketing. We're not going to perform surgery. We're not going to save a life. We can come back from anything as long as just don't physically burn down the building. Like, don't physically, we can come back from that, I'm sure. But if you feel right about something, then just do it. Just do it or come and we'll talk about it and we'll do it. But don't live in like fear of not trying something because you're afraid. And so I love when people reaffirm that for the audience here and the listeners, because I know there are just lots of people who right now might be listening to this conversation and they might be saying, Brian, you're right. The stand-up comedy thing I love because I'm always saying like I would love to do like improv. And then I'm like, oh, maybe not. Maybe, maybe not. But I had the same situation, like just even something similar, like I'm gonna use golf again as a because people have probably heard me talk about it. But I kept saying like I want to learn how to play. I want to learn how to play. And then my dad got me clubs. I got a net in the back. I got a practice green in my house. And I had all these things. And then it was just, well, but when are you going to go to the range, go and hit? And I kept like, and last summer I had to just finally get off the sidelines and go. But it was really just a fear because I was like, well, my swing isn't good. I'm going to look stupid. People are going to be like, she doesn't know what she's doing. But it was just really just taking on like, yeah, well, some of these people are terrible too, but we'll be terrible together
Yeah.
together.
Well,
And
and
then
that's so important what you just said, because the thing is, we can't control. All right, a couple things. This is a big one that you just brought up. We can't control other people and what they think about us, and
yeah,
what difference does it make what they think about us? And in
yeah,
fact, even when we think we know what they
yeah.
think about us, or what, because this is the other thing, is it's not even that we're guessing what they do think about
Yeah.
us. Often we're thinking what they will think of us if,
Mhm.
like, we're predicting the future in ways like, oh, second, third, or fourth order effects, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And when you think about it, it's just so absurd. I don't even know
It's
what I'm gonna think in whatever situation. I'm gonna know
right.
what you're gonna think about
Exactly.
me. And the other piece is they're probably not even thinking about us anyway because they're thinking about themselves.
They're not
They got
even
their own going on. So we
exactly.
blow that stuff up so much, and we make
Yes.
it, and it drives so much of our lives. And this is where it kind
Mhm.
of takes us back to another piece we were talking about. If we can focus our objectives and the things that we make important on stuff we can control, well, it takes other people out of the picture. It takes everybody out. If you're talking about golf and what really is you're going to be your priority is you want to get your 5-iron down the middle of the fairway. That's going to be what success is for you on this particular outing. Well, then
Mhm.
that's it. Then you get out and you figure out, okay, well, here's
Mhm.
the how far I need to be away from the ball. Here's the position of my left arm.
Mhm.
Here's my hip turn. Here's the time. Like, you just figure those things out, and you pay attention to you and the 5-iron and the ball, where the ball
Right.
goes down the
Yeah.
thing. It doesn't matter even a little bit what anybody else is thinking. Let's say that they thought you were the greatest thing ever. Would that fix your 5-iron swing or make it better or keep it consistent or
No.
make it land in the fairway next time? Absolutely not. No matter what
No.
those people think, it is still on you. Whether they hate you or love
Mhm.
you, it is still up to you whether that ball lands in the
Yeah.
fairway or doesn't. So
Exactly.
it's just it's a distractor. It's something that we
Mhm.
think is important, but it's a complete illusion of importance. It's not important at
Mhm.
all. It doesn't influence anything. It doesn't affect anything. This is
Exactly.
residue from just a part of being human. We're
Yeah.
social creatures. We
Yeah.
judge things based on, how we compare to others. That's a natural,
Mhm.
normal, evolutionary thing, but it is not a helpful thing. And just because it's natural and normal doesn't mean that we have to
Exactly.
succumb to it. It means that we need to be
Yes.
aware of it
Mhm.
and then operate in ways that mitigate it.
Yeah, I love that because it was like a detractor. It was stopping me from going. Like months were passing by because every time I was going to, then I'd be like, no, because I'm really stupid. And then after I'm like, you know what? No, I'm gonna go out there and I don't really care. I'm gonna go and do it because I want to do it. And then now it's like, okay, yeah, of course I'm going. I can't wait for the weather to warm up to
Yeah.
go.
Well, and what and not even just in golf, but in other areas, what people will start to notice if you go out with a growth mindset, meaning that I understand that improvement is possible. I understand that yeah, I get that I'm bad now. My skills are really bad. I understand that. I'm aware of it. I accept it. That's where I am. But I also know that I can improve. And with effort, that improvement is going to come. If you
Mhm.
go out with that attitude, that's an attractive attitude, and people will want to help. You will experience the opposite of what you described the fear was. With the fear being
Right.
people will ridicule me, people will look down on me, people will ostracize me. No, people are going to embrace you, especially people better because they've been there too. And
Mhm.
they lean into
Yeah.
people who want to learn, who really truly want to learn.
Yeah.
That's just something I've noticed in many contexts across the board.
Mhm.
So it really is just something if you can just put the trust in there that I'm going to focus on me. I'm going to focus on me for the reasons that are for me and don't involve anybody else. You will notice that that social part will come together. People will gravitate toward you.
Mhm.
Not everybody, but you'll start to have some really cool people come. Oh,
Yeah.
you know what? I was noticing that was really cool. You know how you improved. I saw the difference in that.
Yeah.
And just that comment, you didn't elicit it. You didn't ask for it.
Mhm.
It wasn't the reason you were there. And it's although it's nice to hear, it's not going to
Right.
be the deal breaker of whether you come or go the next time around.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
people are going to notice, and it I don't know. It's a great way to develop relationships and just
Yes.
a door opener when we go out with that kind of open
Mhm.
attitude.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, this has been so great. Brian, can you tell everyone listening or watching how do you work with people? If someone is out there now and they're like, I want to work with you. What do they need to do?
Yeah. Well, so what I mean, go to the website first because there's a lot of information there on some different programs that I have. Again, if you want to bring me in to speak about any of this stuff, you can reach out, do a discovery call. We can have a conversation about what it is you're looking for. Workshops, group coaching, information about all of that is on the website as well. And truly, if you just have a question, just email me, brian@brianhiteglobal.com. I promise you I will get back to you. And if you want to have a conversation about any of this stuff more deeply, you can reach out and schedule a call for that too. Because I'll tell you, if you struggle with pressure, if you struggle with stress, if you struggle with feeling overwhelmed regularly in different situations with fear, and you don't have somebody to walk you through, to guide you through
Mhm.
how to handle that kind of stuff, it can be very, very challenging. So please reach out, check out the programs. If anything resonates with you, let me know. I'd love to work with you because I've been in all of those places. Everything I just described, I've experienced it myself, and I probably will again. I'm not perfect. Just because you have the skills doesn't mean that it all goes
Mhm.
away. It just means that when it arises, you can handle it more effectively, more efficiently, and you just you can take care of things more quickly without
Mhm.
having it drag you down so far. So, and on a flip side, help you get better as a result of what you're going through
Mhm.
because that's the other piece that just for me is so important. When we experience these challenges, they are challenges. We want them to go away. We want to improve, but just understanding that this moment that we're in is a moment that is a teaching moment. It is a moment that is providing wisdom. It's providing goodness. It is shaping us. How is it going to shape us? Well, that's up to us. And that's where these skills and concepts come in.
Yes. Okay. And give us the website. We'll also drop it in the show notes, but just tell everyone.
Yeah, brianhiteglobal.com, BrianHite global, GLOBAL.com. That's where you can find me. And I hope to hear from you.
Fantastic. These were some great insights and great information. I definitely love that. So now I'm going to transition us to three things with Ryan. I'm going to ask you three more questions that helps our audience get to know you a little bit better. So the first one is a two-parter. How do you start and end the day?
I start the day with the alarm going off and me immediately getting vertical. I've wrote an essay about that actually, but it's one of those things that if I don't immediately get vertical, I will go back to sleep, and
Oh.
that's not what needs to happen. So, but I know that if I get vertical and I just no matter how tired I am or how early it is or how whatever worn out, if I just sit there vertical for a little bit, the energy will
Mhm.
come, and then I'll stand up and I can get the day started by making coffee and then sitting down and reading a little bit. Like
Okay.
that's how I start my day. How do I end my day? Usually
Mhm.
with a sitcom with my fiance sitting next to me.
Mhm.
That's how that ends, and then we go to bed and do our ablutions, and that's
Yeah.
the end.
So
But yeah, the actual interact with the day part usually with just a sitcom, something dumb that we don't have to pay attention to. Both of us think a lot during the day. It's just nice to
Mhm.
not have to think,
Oh,
and I
for
love
sure.
laughing, so I
Yes,
love having
yes.
the little sitcom on.
Yeah, I can agree with you. I love that. All right. Second question is what's a goal or an intention that you've set for yourself this year?
This year, there are quite a few things that I have in the burners. I think probably the broadest thing is I would like to have some program. I mean, the programs that I have, I'm running.
Mhm.
What I would love to have is to scale to the point where
Mhm.
I'm able to spend more time writing. I want to write books. I want to create the curricula
Mhm.
and have
Mhm.
other people deliver the curricula. I
Yes.
really enjoy talking to people and interacting with the different populations that I work with, which are corporate, athletes, performers, first
Mhm.
responders, and education. I love interacting with all of those people and
Mhm.
through those interactions, learning what kinds of things are challenging for them, getting into the
Right.
literature, creating, writing. And so that's really what I would like. I'd like to be able to scale to the point where I can spend a lot of my day writing and supervising other people delivering some of these programs in different places.
Love that. All right. And the last question is where are you currently finding inspiration?
Where do it's there are a few places. One is I started doing close-up magic again. I started doing magic when I was a kid, when I was a
Oh.
teenager. And during the pandemic, I started doing close-up magic again with cards
Mhm.
mainly, a little bit of coins, some other stuff. But I have a friend of mine. He's 70, 71. He stunt coordinator, second unit director. He's worked on some of the biggest shows ever. His name's Doug Coleman. If you look him up, you absolutely have seen movies that he's done. But he has been in magic his whole life, and now he's working as a professional magician. He's in
Oh,
addition
wow.
to coordinating and it's still in the stunt world. He's on stage, and to me, that's inspiring. You got a guy that's he's at 71. He's pushing the limit. He's like, yeah, I've done the stunts, I've done the coordinating, I still enjoy it. I'm
Mhm.
gonna keep doing it, but I've only kind of played around with this magic thing on set and amateur. I want to get on stage. I want to do something
Mhm.
different. I want to challenge myself in this way. So that's one. I'm doing the magic. Actually, he's doing a show out in the LA area Valentine's Day. I'm going to open for him. I'm going to do
Oh,
5, 10
cool.
minutes on stage. I've never done magic on stage before. Here we
But you're
go.
doing it.
Be the
Yeah.
first time. Then the others, I got some electric drums for Christmas, and I've
Oh,
never played
nice.
drums before except for on my steering wheel, in the car. But so that's inspiring too. It's just taking
Mhm.
a break. Like what inspires me is getting. I love the work that I do, but stepping out into other things.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I have in my exercise room I have juggling clubs, and I'll juggle. I mean, just whatever, just different things that take my
Yeah.
mind into different places that provide challenges in different ways because that
Mhm.
feeds me for when I come back to my work.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. All right. And before I let you go, what are three things you would like our audience listening or watching to take away from the conversation today?
Well, one, if you're experiencing pressure, it's the result of your attention being on the consequences. And the easiest way to fix that is by bringing your attention to the present moment. There are a lot of strategies for that, and you hear a lot of talk around mindfulness right now, and all of it's good because the present moment is where we actually affect change. If you're worried about the future is going to be determined by what we do right now. So the attention in the right now, that's the key thing. I'd say another thing is the opportunities. If the
Mhm.
opportunities are out there, they're not rare. They happen all the time. We just don't tend to recognize them. So opening up, keeping that broad awareness and understanding that hold on to your goals. I call it the 38 special version of goal setting. For those old enough to understand 38 specials song like hold on loosely but don't let go. That's the
Mhm.
goals. So set your goals, have it provide some direction, but just hold on loosely. Be able to shift and move and
Mhm.
adapt
Mhm.
when different situations come up. And I'd say the last one is what I just ended with, which is no matter how much you care about your work and how passionate you are and how strongly you want those goals to succeed and how much you're prioritizing those efforts, you have to rejuvenate. You have to have some other stuff that feeds
Mhm.
you, some other stuff that energizes you. So if you don't have a hobby or you say you don't have time for a hobby, truly, I mean, that's why I
Yeah.
mentioned the juggling clubs. They're sitting right there easy. So when I walk in the room to work out, I pick up the clubs, I'll juggle for 3-4 minutes. It's 3 or 4 minutes. I
Yeah.
always have a deck of cards sitting,
Yeah.
next to me. Keep whatever that's right there. So if I'm sitting and talking to somebody or I'm watching a TV show, I can play with the cards. Make it easy to do your hobby, and you don't have to do it for long. The drums are in there. If I sit down and play for 10 minutes, that's probably a long time. I'll sit down for 3, 4, 5 minutes, and it's enough to energize me, to feed me. And that's absolutely necessary for us to be at our best.
Yeah. Oh, well, I am definitely inspired by you and everything that you shared today. Can't wait. You gotta tell me about how your act goes when you next. Nah, you got me. I'm intrigued. I want to know.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to figuring out how it goes myself. That's gonna be a good time.
Well, Brian, I definitely want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with the Glow Up Girl community. It has definitely been a joy talking with you today.
I've enjoyed being here too. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I really appreciate you bringing me on. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, stay tuned, everyone. I'll be right back.